at the age of 4, I went with my parents, went to the Belgian Congo. My father had already been there, starting 1924 to 1929. As he was a minerals prospector in the Katanga province, known for copper and cobalt extraction. So, okay, came 1939, the crisis on the world markets, and war started in Poland, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd September. Some reasons are not particularly known to me, not exactly familiar with. We went back to Belgium, and went to go to live in Asst, where both my father and myself were born. And my father was unemployed. In Asst was unemployed, so we went in the Limburg province. We went to spend. Well, the Germans. In the meantime, the Germans had the Wehrmacht had arrived, occupied the country, and my father still unemployed. He went to Genk, 15 meters. He went to work in the coal mine industry. That was about the only location where they can took advantage of his knowledge of his colonial and minerals scouting, extracting history. Now, okay, so that World War II was over. At the end, unfortunately, my father went into the resistance movement, and at the end of the Germans left in the month of September 1944, and on the 11th, the first September 11th, the first September 11th, as far as I'm concerned, 1944. So my father was. Fell into the hands of parachute infantry, German parachute infantry, was court-martialed to death penalty, and was shot on the spot. Okay, then I was war orphaned. We went back, my mother, brother, my sister, and my good self, went back to Asst, my secondary school education. But I had already, but still, you know, okay, this age 12 through age 18, almost 18 and a half. And I must say, during that period, probably a little bit pushed by my mother, although I don't think I didn't need very much to be pushed. I had only Congo in mind and going back to the Congo. But going back is very important to me. So if you were going to ask me about the experience of that, the white man, the European, the Caucasian arriving for the first time in Africa, I have not that experience. I was at the age, 19. I went to the colonial, in Antwerp was colonial administration, a university. I'm sorry. You got the degree, academic university degree in public administration, political science, and public administration. Geared to Africa, geared to what later became Development Cooperation. I graduated in 1955, and so in the meantime, I met my wife. We married in 1956, with on a boat, on a ship to the Congo, to Angola. At that time, if you travel to Katanga, which is in the deep south of the Belgian Congo, bordering on what today is Zambia and what today is Angola. So you had to disembark at Lobito Harbor, take the train, Benguela Railways. You get 3 days and 3 nights. It took you to the Congo. Okay, then the governor of the province, what you call a state in the United States, it's called the province, and the province is run by a governor, exactly the same type as you use in the United States and other countries. Now, the governor decided to send me to Mutshatsha, and Mutshatsha is part of the territoire of Kolwezi, and where eventually I became the chef de poste, call it the mayor. You can compare it to the mayor of a small township, about 100, 200 Europeans. But the area around was quite big, 80,000 Congolese inhabitants. We have we have counted and recounted them at least twice. So there is no doubt about it. Was the number was very close to 80,000, and that experience turned out to my advantage. I'm still very happy when thinking back at that period. But it could have been, looking at it from today, it could have been a disaster, because in fact I was far too junior to run such an important township or municipality. Okay, so by that time we started 1956. I said 3 years. So we are ending now. We are now May 1959. Back to Europe for holiday, 6 months holiday. So we came back in October 1959. October 59, the same governor of the same Katanga province decided that he had. At that time, I had gained my spurs. I wasn't a greenhorn anymore. So the governor decided to send me to Kolwezi, to the Congolese township, the Congolese township of Kolwezi. Now I was still too junior, I was a little bit too junior to be number one, so I became number two. I became the number two, the associate administrator of the Kolwezi township. That was very tough. It was quite demanding and tough, since running the local township that was with perhaps 80,000 inhabitants. That was what I think that could be done by almost everybody. But in our organization, in our scheme of distribution in our system functions, etc. The work settlements of the big mining company Minière de Katanga, they had 4 big townships settlements, employee settlements of their own. Mutshatsha, Kolwezi, Rulan and Minière. All these came under my administration. Now, that again, that was not. I'm not going to say it was an easy job, because it wasn't. But to make things, it became cumbersome. It became grim. It became demanding. Became grim. In early 1960, like January, February, March, then, but by that time the Belgian government in Brussels had announced that to the Congolese who were asking, I'm not saying fighting for independence, let's say, were asking independence. The Belgian government in Brussels had already promised full independence on 30 June 1960, and the 30th of June, only 6 months later. That is that these Congolese population were known to be quiet, and I wouldn't say without, I don't say that we had many problems. Everything was under control, everything was well organized, particularly by the big mining and other big companies, or at least 3 at Kolwezi at that time. But then started when people began not knowing what is independence all about, but they very soon realized that it was about power. Who is going when the white man will go. We didn't know, but I presume the Congolese expected us more or less. Well, there was nobody was talking about the Europeans to leave the country, but the Congolese were well aware that they were going to take over. How? They had no idea, but they were well decided. And then started something we have known, something that exists all over the world. There were at least two opposite factions, but these factions became very soon, they became hostile. And then started, I have already said, let's say it again, March, February, perhaps February already, March, April, May, June, perhaps only 4. But that started, particularly for me and all my colleagues who were around at that time, that became very exciting now in my memory. If I ever write my memoirs, a very exciting period, but in fact exhilarating period, you name it, we had it, but also it was very dangerous. And I must say, although nobody has ever questioned me about that or anything else, but I must say that I never noticed any hostility against white man or white authority. But they were at each other's throats. There was a Konakat party, called it, was for 80-90% indigenous to Katanga, was purely Katanga. On the other side you had the Balubakat and Uni-Congo people, and they're 90%, but these situations can happen in every, this can happen in Venezuela, this can happen all over the world, where there is a concentration of industry and and mining big companies. So the Balubakat opposing the Konakat people were 90% were immigrants. Were not Katangese. So the battle that went on, because there was killings every night, not in daylight. Not in daylight. We managed to have everything under control. But after 6 in the evening, when the nightfall, there was murder. There was no killing of tens or hundreds of people, but every night at least 2 or 3, 4 people were killed inside their houses. So when next morning went out, at that time I slept in my office. I spent every day and every night sleeping on the floor in my own office. Morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Then we called in the constabulary, the royal constabulary. We did have them. We did have them in Belgium. We don't have them anymore. That's what the French call gendarmerie. That's what the French call gendarmerie. We had them. We don't have them anymore. The Dutch call them marechaussee, and so on and so on. Now these gendarmerie, I had 2 platoons, sometimes more. They again, they spent the night in the offices of the local administration. 6 o'clock in the morning, wake up, and then we went touring around, going from house to house. In fact, I don't like to say this, but room service. It was room service. In fact, it was collecting the bodies. But the work was done properly. The work was done properly because we never. I can't remember having to take anybody to the hospital. You know, they were dead. Bodies were cold when we had arrived there. So the majority of the killings must have appeared around midnight. Well, then came independence. Then came independence, 30th of June, and then what comes next is general history, and the general history with the uprising of Chombe. So that was the month of July, month of August. But by the end of August, I left. With the car. I left. My wife had already left in early July, and my daughter, we had one child at the time. With my car, I drove through Angola. That was still a Portuguese colony at the time. I drove all the way to Lobito, waiting. Lobito was just waiting 1 week, 2 weeks. I came a Belgian ship, Antwerp bound, Lobito bound, Antwerp bound, and on the return voyage. And okay, that one it took me back to Belgium, and that is the end of my colonial history. Mm-hmm. I was only 27 by that time, and I can already fill a book and write my memoirs about that short period in time.
Very good, very good. What did that feel like? I mean, when at such a young age, being in charge of so many people, what did it feel like? Was it scary? Was it frightening when you're in charge of so many people, or were you comfortable with it, or how did it feel?
Oh, I could cope.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was not an easy job, but it was certainly not superhuman. Oh no,
mm-hmm.
Oh no, I could handle it. Mm-hmm. We had the right people. We had the right instrument. These Congolese constabulary, these gendarmes, were absolutely magnificent. They must have been, I'm sorry to say so, but they might have been the best uniformed and peacekeeping and war, peace enforcing people. I cannot imagine better uniformed people than those trained by the Congolese army.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe your feelings when the first time that you saw the Congo? What was your impression of the region?
Well, the first time has been as a child, and I would say instant love. I'm still is there though, hasn't changed. I'm still in love with Congo. I'm still in love with Africa. I will die dreaming of Africa. That is for sure. That goes probably for all my colleagues who are sitting around. Well, I can't see them, but they are listening now. I'm sure that they are the same situation. When we will die, we will think of Congo, and or Africa as a whole.
Can you describe some of your fondest memories? Your fondest memories of the area, the things that you liked?
The fondest memory is, there was not much leisure. So from that leisure, apart from some pigeon shooting and some rabbit shooting, there was not much leisure. So all the satisfaction, my God, was in work and working hard. That is almost everything we did, but it gave us tremendous satisfaction. I never claimed overtime allowances. That did not even cross my mind. I was at Mutshatsha, starting 59, early 6, at least 2.5 years. I was appointed a police judge. Now, the equivalent magistrates' court, I think in England, yeah. I had decided of my own. Well, my wife was not very happy with that decision, but I decided, and I did it to do that on Sunday morning. Yes, on Sunday morning. Some people, from Protestant, from the Garagazi Evangelical Mission, some people protested on religious grounds that they should not work and they should not appear in court on a Sunday, and that was fully respected. I had no problem with that. No problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever. No. No.
So would you reschedule if they would not show up on a Sunday? Would you reschedule their court?
Beg your pardon? I gave myself free afternoons on Sunday. So yeah, on Sunday apart from, I don't remember if I occasionally went to church. It might have happened. Yeah, churches were all around. Religions were well represented. So not only the Catholic of course, the Catholic mission, but there was particularly the Garanganze Evangelical Mission. It was very old. It was older than the Belgian Congo itself. It has been established in 1906. That is 2 years before the Congo became Belgian Congo in 1900. But perhaps it could be. Perhaps it was not the proper answer to your question.
Oh no, that's fine.
That's okay. Yeah.
Was the you said there was a lot. There was obviously a lot of violence prior to independence and right when independence happened. Most of the violence that you saw was against Congolese against Congolese.
Yes, but from different races. Different races and different origin. Yes, and it was a very short period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, under Belgian rule, it was a very short period. It's probably still going on today. 46 years later, it's probably going on today. But that is not of my concern since we stopped at 30 June 1960. But it was, if I may stress, it was a very short period. 5, not even 6. Make it 5. Make it 5 months. No. And it was very limited in time. It was very limited in space, and it was very limited in space. It was not everybody against everybody. It was the conservative against the Democrats, as I've mentioned it. It was Konakat against Balubakat. You know, but that was ethnically based, and but of course there were other symptoms underlying.
How did do you recall how, in your opinion, how the seeds of independence sort of grew? Like, where did the ideas of independence spread, and how did they spread? The ideas, were there individuals who at that time were talking to the Congolese about independence and what that would entail, or how did the ideas?
It's a very good question, and it's very hard to answer. You will most probably ask the same question to my colleagues sitting here, and they are going to give you a different answer from my answer, since this was the Katanga. Katanga is not only on the map, not only from a geographical point of view, but even in the mind, in the language, in the customs. It's very distant from Kinshasa, of what the Bas Congo, as we called it, the Lower Congo. You know, when you lived in Katanga, this might be true today. I would not be surprised if that was still going on. But in Belgian colonial days, whether you were white, whether you were black, whether you were Jew, whether you were Greek, whether you were Portuguese, all these people lived there. There were two. There was the world. World was a very simple thing, you know. There was the Katanga, the east of the Congo, Swahili speaking Katanga, and then there was the others. That was the others, and that was the Bas Congo, the Upper Congo. See? Yeah, okay, yeah. Go to the side, American South. Yes, you have the same feeling when they talk about the North or the Yankees. Yeah, there's something similar. Yeah, yes. And it's very important. I stress that there was no difference between Europeans, colonial people, and the indigenous people. They had the same feeling, and I'm almost convinced that they are still today. There is Katanga, God's own country, and then there's the others.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
Brings back good memories. Although there was much bloodshed. Yes.
Yeah.
Still going on, so unfortunately.
A lot of people today, particularly in the United States, probably don't understand colonization or what happened during this period very well. What, in your opinion, what are some of the things that you would like them to know that they probably don't understand?
Yeah, okay, they are not the only one not to understand.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much understanding in Belgium, even not even today.
Mm-hmm.
There's never been much understanding in Belgium as far as the Belgian Congo and the Congo is concerned. What I can say that I never ever during these 4 years, but short time, but filled with history, filled with the world and Africa moving on. I must confess that until that moment when it became clear, early 1960, that there would be a change of rule, that power would be switched from the European, from the colonial people, from the Belgian people to the local people, then everything changed in the mentality and in people conversation, you know. But political parties were mushrooming. I have mentioned only two because they were the most important one.
Mm-hmm.
But they were mushrooming. My colleagues will name you. There might have been 12. There might have been 24. It was mushrooming. The closer that date of 30 June came, the more political parties there was. But that it was more outside the Katanga province than inside. Inside, once again, there was two big parties and political groups, based on race, based on origin, based on language. Yes.
What do you think are the most positive results of your work that you can think of that came out of the work you've done?
That is not easy. That is not easy to answer that question. I can see the positive results. I can see the positive results from my point of view, but I'm particularly aware. I'm very much aware that the administrated people. I don't know how much they enjoyed, and yes, in detail they appreciated. The Congolese appreciate very much the Medicare, the medical care, the social array, the benefits. You know, it was a very patronizing. It was not patronizing. It was more a trustee. It was more a trusteeship. You know, it was very much too much. It was too much a father and children relationship. Now, children do appreciate what the parents do for them, but they do see the world and they do see reality from another point of view. Children do. We have children. We know how it works. We have been children and we have children. We know that you may do the best you think you can do and you will do for them, and they may still have different feelings. So that goes for the Congolese prior to independence. So I would rather be conservative on not giving too much of my opinion. No, I don't know.
Okay. With independence, and I asked these gentlemen too. Do you think that there is anything that Belgium could have done differently that might have made the transition smoother?
Something that made the independence move. Well, yes. We were not well served in telecommunication. Was of course no television, and there was radio, and I do not consider. I have no newspaper. Do not consider myself as particularly well informed as to what was going on and the outside world, outside Katanga in the first place, and outside the Belgian Congo in the second place. But I do remember, and that is today confirmed by every history book, there was this independence movement was around. I think it started in Indonesia. It started with the Dutch colonization that was brutally in a military manner pushed off, thrown away by the Indonesian people. I think that might have triggered it off. But moving from Asia to Africa, again, I have my reservations for lack of good communication. I have my reservations, but there was, particularly in the French colonies, was a movement towards independence. Yeah. And that, and there you have a common language. The majority of Congolese in 1960, the majority did not speak French, did not understand French. Our system, our school, we were, we started as everybody. We started with the primary school education, moving to the secondary school education. But at the primary school education level, in Katanga, Swahili-speaking country, the vernacular and even the scholastic, the teacher's language was the Swahili. So, and automatically in the other part of the Congo, so in the Lingala speaking part of the country, that the education, the primary education, start of secondary, that is as far as we went, was based. So, I would say majority of Congolese were certainly not fluent in the French language, but nevertheless, those 10, 15, perhaps 20% who did understand French and eventually became francophones, they were listening radio to the radio Brazzaville, radio, I don't know, radio from
Cairo.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, Cairo. Yes, I missed the principal one.
Did you learn Swahili?
Oh yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Were there other parts of Congolese culture that you found interesting, that you took on, that you liked, that you became part of you? Because you mentioned the handshake when we shook hands today.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes. If there was one of our African friends around, I would then greet him in a different way than I greeted you. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I would say Jambo Abani, Jambo Abani. I would greet him in his own way. Oh yes. When I speak of African, I speak, and having lived in Dar es Salaam, having lived 11 years, for a long time on the shores of the Indian Ocean. That is not Swahili. It's a very Arabic country, and if somebody from Dar es Salaam would walk in, or particularly somebody from Bagamoyo, from Malindi, on the Kenya border, would walk in, and perhaps we would recognize. I would say Salam Alaikum.
Mm.
I would greet him in Arabic, yes, and he would answer me. He would say Malaikum Salam. That's where the Arabic stops. That's where it stops. It does. But Swahili. But it's very well received on the coast. Swahili means language of the coast. Sawahil. Sawahil means coast. So Swahili is the language Sawahil, the language of the coast. Now in that small part of the world, but it's very much front page news now and then. Today it's Kenya. Today after tomorrow. Tomorrow it will be. Today it's the north of Kenya. Then it will be Sudan. But unfortunately, no, Sudan is too far to the north. Too far to the north. Somalia. Somalia is about the limit.
What was it like when you came back to Belgium? Was it difficult after you lived in that culture for a while, was it difficult to come back here? And did people treat the colonials in a good way, or how was it when you came back after independence?
It was very unpleasant. It was very unpleasant. You know, it was traumatizing. Oh yes, yes. Now, there was, as far as I'm concerned, and the people, my relative, my family, my relatives, my friends, the people I know, well, it was not the item of was not much talking and conversation and dialoguing about it. You know, it was not mentioned as a topic, but oh yes, it was very unpleasant. Yes, it was very unpleasant, and I have. Now we are 46 years later, or 46 years later, yeah, 46 years later, I still am, my colleagues may have the same feeling, we are not satisfied or even embarrassed by the fact that the French colonials were certainly not met. Now France they have the OAS problem, but that was limited to Algeria. The Dutch, we can compare with the Dutch, we can compare with the British, and later with the Portuguese. And the colonials who came back to Holland, they had certainly no hostile treatment whatsoever. The Brits who went back to Britain never ever encountered any hostility whatsoever. And they were very well treated by their own governments. They were very well treated, very well. Completely different. It was completely different with Belgium. Now I know I'm going to ask one question that you are probably going to ask. Where does where does the difference come from? What is the difference in reception? Where does it come from? Well, it keeps my mind going, yes, for 46 years, yes. And perhaps this came up lately. The difference with the other colonial powers I mentioned is that we had been only 75 years in the Belgian Congo. So there was we the colonials, we had building up a colonial mentality, a colonial spirit. But Belgium was not even the start, except from the Catholic missionary side. That may be an exception, but generally speaking, there was no colonial thinking, atmosphere, understanding. Whereas today in Holland, with when they lost their colonies, they haven't lost them all. They still have Curaçao, Aruba, and the Windward and the Windward Antilles, and still there's nothing wrong. Even today, go to Holland. It's not far from here. They're not. I go to England. I have a daughter. A daughter who has a British daughter. When she mentions it, she's born in Bujumbura. When she said I'm East Africa born, when you say that in London or in England, you are not less than anybody. You might be a little bit. You might be. You might be mounting on the scale. Yes. This is very personal.
Oh,
very
sure.
personal. I cannot evidence. I cannot prove. You must ask my colleagues. But lately, very recently, this came up to me that we had not been a colonial power long enough. We had no colonial tradition. The Dutch have, the British have. They still have it today.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, if you don't mind, can we bring your wife in too, and we'll talk a little bit with both of you?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Comfortable with that?
Oh
Are you
yes.
comfortable?
Claire, are you okay with that?
Her side.
You're going to fight.
Her side.
Because you're not.
Her side is perfect, and her and her ears.
Are you comfortable with that? Are you comfortable with that? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any? Could I have something to drink?
Yeah. We had to follow a seminar from Mademoiselle Comelio, and Mademoiselle Comelio told us what to do, what not to do, how to behave, how not to behave. I had been a girl guide for 10 years, so I was a little bit prepared to live in the bush. And well, I was young, came just from university, was newlywed, so everything was fine. But then what my husband didn't mention that was that the first 7 months we were really in the bush, without water, without electricity, without anything, just living with the people of the village. There was a chief. The chief came every Sunday to my house with some flowers to get a whiskey or a glass of wine. And for the rest, yeah, well, what did I have to do? Have a garden, try to have some vegetables, shoot a pigeon, as my husband said, shoot a rabbit, go fishing, learn the language, because I had never learned a single word of Swahili. So I knew to say, what is this, or how do you call this? And I could still memorize 25 or 30 words in a day. So I don't think the chap who worked for me knew more than maybe 300, 400 words. That means that after 3-4 months, I knew his vocabulary as well, as good as himself. Then the verbs and the, how you say?
The nouns?
That I learned in a book afterwards from my husband. But once I could talk to them, it was fine, because women came with their children. They had malaria, they had a wound, they had fallen in the fire, and they had lots of things, and you helped them from the morning. My husband was a workaholic. He was gone.
He still is.
He had his job, and I was free to do all the rest. That means the house, the chicken, the everything. Everything was to do. What you do in a house, I did. So then when we were only allowed to be 10 days a month at home in our house, and the 20 other days we had to travel around in the bush.
Up country.
Up country, just to count the people, because we were doing le recensement.
Census.
Yeah. So there was a lot of work in the post, in Mutshatsha. So 10 days wasn't enough, in fact. And it was also a very big area, 30,000 square kilometers, where we had to move in to see all those villages. So what we agreed, he did the man and I did the women. So we were sitting on a table like this, my husband, the man, les fiches, the cards,
The filing
cabinet of the man,
Yeah.
and I did the women. So it went it was much faster, and we could gain 2-3 days and be a bit longer at home after. So then when we left that place, that Muso Katanga, where we had no water, no electricity, of course, when I came in Mutshatsha, for me that was fantastic, but I had a decent house and a nice garden, and I had electricity and
telephone.
and sometimes water. In the dry season, not very much. It was a little bit mud that came out during the day. But then when I had a baby, we found a well not far from there, so we could go and collect water as well. So then we had at least decent water for the baby.
What was your favorite aspect of daily life?
Everything. Waking up in the morning with the blue sky and sun and birds and flowers and everything. And nice people, because the Congolese are very nice people.
Oh, yeah.
I feel so sorry for them, what happens to them every day. They are very,
They're kind.
they're very kind, they like to sing, they
Like to dance.
Afterwards we were in other countries, and I never heard as much playing tam-tam as I heard in Congo.
Wow. Did you have a lot of friends that were Congolese?
Everybody, the whole village, the whole village. And we went from one village to another. And my, I don't know how, if I'm allowed to call him we called him houseboy, because that was in those days the legal name. Today it sounds a bit...
Colonialistic.
But I can't say my staff, because I think staff is such a big word. And I had only one. And he had a girlfriend in all the villages where we went. So we said to him the day before, tomorrow we go to such a place. And okay, then he went with us in the car and we left. And then on the road I said to my husband, I said, oh, why don't we stop here? And then he was very cross because he had already told the people that we were coming. And his girlfriend was ready. But also the chief had prepared everything for us. There was one waiting with a chicken, another with a few eggs, a few tomatoes. The guest house was clean, and we had to go and to stay there.
They had telecommunication.
They had
Tom-tom.
yeah.
They had the tom-tom.
I don't know how they did it.
yeah.
I don't know how they
It was
did it.
as good as smoke signals from the Cherokee.
I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, oh yes. Ask my colleagues, they will confirm.
How far?
I never managed to get to Kazofu, 80 kilometers from Mutshatsha. I never to arrive there without somebody waiting me.
Yeah,
They had telecommunication.
Yeah.
They had it.
Maybe they
How
had it.
far could they?
Smoke signals, tom-tom, tom-tom beat.
Yeah.
You could hear the tom-tom. Tuk, 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 tuk. I never managed to decipher, to analyze how it works and where it comes from. I know. Probably some of my colleagues.
We had no
might
time to
have
find
worked.
out.
We had no time to find
We
out.
had to work all the time.
And they have abandoned it now.
Because
I guess.
what you were asking about the animosity or what?
Yeah.
We ran out of petrol, and the people of the village were listening to the radio, and they were listening to
Early
Leopoldville.
January 1959.
Yeah, and they were listening to Leopoldville, and there was fighting. And they told us that, there was something happening there. And we were there, and one chap went
Whites were molested.
with his bicycle to get some petrol for us. And the woman came and asked if I wanted to have something to eat. And that was a complete different world. They knew us, we were there for 4 years with them, and I think they trusted us. And they were friends.
They noticed that we had a baby, the baby girl with us. Now, and they said, okay, they said, she cannot stay hungry. We go, just wait. We have some eggs. We didn't ask her anything. They brought us eggs because that baby girl cannot stay without food.
Wow,
Yeah.
nice.
And the chap who went on with his bicycle to town to get the fuel, well, he came back later with the fuel, so we just waited. And that happened, and that happened. But then we also did special things for them. I once came in a village and there was a baby that couldn't walk and
He fell into a fire. Yeah.
So that was very bad, and
It was
it
badly
was
burned,
maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so still 2 hours before dark. And I drove back to town and I took him and his father with
To
me.
the hospital,
And I
yeah.
brought him to the hospital where a doctor couldn't refuse, because that was a hospital from the Union Minière.
From the mining company.
I didn't care, I just went in there, I said call the doctor because that baby is really in a very bad state, needs help.
Attendance.
And then we left on holiday, and 6 months later when we came back in town, that father and the baby, they found us. And they had made for the baby the same uniform my husband was
Copied
wearing.
my uniform. Yeah, they copied my uniform.
And he was there with I had been to the market that same morning, and I said to my houseboy, I said, I don't need anything. And he said, yes, but you should come because it's something special. And there was that man with a chicken, with tomatoes, with the usual stuff that they bring there. And with a little baby, that was called Willy. And, he was fine. So that's something that I sometimes think I can go back there and, if they are not dead, those who were there when we were there, they would still accept us.
When you see all the problems that are going on there now, is it?
It's horrible.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. I can't watch it. I can't watch it.
Do you think about the people that you were with?
Yeah, of course.
Oh yes.
Because when I left, my servant said to me, when does this independence finish?
Yeah.
I said, well, never. He said, that means that my children will never go to school.
Yeah.
And he refused to pack. I was packing, and he refused to help.
Yeah. Yes.
And then I gave him everything. I didn't pack the buckets and the radio and everything. Take it. And you know.
But they were very close when we left. Yes.
He didn't like it.
Yeah.
He didn't like it.
Willie, in an email you described to me the way you'd fallen in love with the country, and you described the rain on the clay.
Oh yes.
Could you talk about that?
Don't mention it because it makes me cry.
Have you been in Africa?
South Africa.
Ah, well, it's not the same.
Not
It's
the
too
same.
cold.
No, it's not in that stupid. No, it's not.
Because when you arrive, the smell of the dust and the smell of the,
My colleagues,
the heat,
colleagues, they will
and your
confirm.
luggage gets wet because of it comes out of the plane, and it's it's such a
The south of the equator. Where
already landing, when you see the little fire
Ah, yeah,
in the bush everywhere,
Smoke,
it's
smoke,
the
smoke,
smoke
smoke.
going up.
Yeah.
You can never forget the country life. You can never forget it.
It's worse for
Because
people.
sometimes I think these people, we were young, so we are a bit nostalgic, but that's not true. I've lived in other countries, and it's I don't know, it's marvelous. It was marvelous.
Would you do it again if you had a chance to?
Yeah,
do it?
yeah.
Yes, oh, yeah, by all means, by all means.
Yeah. So did my children.
The other thing I was interested in is when people think about this period, a lot of times, I mean, people, just people who aren't familiar with it, they forget about all these great things that happened, like with the child and the help that was given. Can you think of any other experiences that you could share with us of times when you helped them or they helped you?
Well, we helped them all the time. I should have brought you letters that we got
Oh,
to
yes,
thank us and to they ask
Say regrets.
they regret that we were leaving and please forgive us for what we did wrong and so on and so on. I still have these letters at home.
Well, we'll copy them to you.
But I don't. My children said, but not everybody was like you. But all our colleagues were the same. All the people I know, they just have the same experience we had.
Your children have mixed feelings about it, or?
My children know after independence. I have 2 children born in Africa, and then we stayed there until 1990. So, but that's not the period you want to talk about.
No.
So that's my children. They knew it after independence, and of course that was all different.
You stayed till when? 1990? Is that what you said?
We stayed until 1990.
Yes.
Wow.
That's a long. Yeah. Yeah.
So your total time in Africa, what's the total amount of time you spent in Africa altogether?
From 56 to
30 years.
60.
30 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the holidays included,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, with the holidays included.
Holidays included, about 30 years.
Wow.
So half of your married life or more, you were in Africa, of your married life.
We were married in 1956.
Yeah.
We're married 50 years now.
Yeah, so
So-
more than half of your life you were in Africa. Half of your married life together.
Well, okay, fine,
Yeah.
like everybody, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, better than today in Europe, I suppose.
yeah. How long did it take? Because it sounds like they would seek you out when the children were hurt or they needed help.
Yeah, yeah.
After you arrived, how long would it take for them?
They were there immediately.
Okay.
They were there immediately. Because my husband went to talk to the chief of the village. My houseboy was emptying the car. And I was already there with, there they were, malaria, coughing, wounds, whatever. They had it. They had everything, every misery. They were just waiting for us. And then they were not used to medicine, so they were cured very, very rapidly. If you take an aspirin every day, you don't feel the same effect of an aspirin than somebody who gets it once a year. So that was
Yeah,
miraculous, you know.
instant healing.
Yeah.
Was there trust immediately?
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
When I was expecting my child, we were in the middle, really, of nowhere.
Yeah.
And the women,
The jungle.
children that big had never seen a white woman.
Yeah,
So the whole village, all the women of the village came to dance around me.
yeah.
And you know, clapping that mama is pregnant and you know, and good luck and everything. And I think
Yeah.
European might not have seen it that I was pregnant because I was always very thin and very slim in those days. But they knew immediately. They came.
All the
and
Africans are very, very,
they have feelings that we don't.
close to nature, huh?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something. Did they come to you for advice beyond medical? Like, would they ask you about advice for other things beyond just medical things?
Medical was the biggest problem.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the padre from Mutshatsha would give me some things that he had promised here or there, and his car broke down, and can you take it and give it to my catechist, and I did that also.
Missionary work by proxy.
Yeah, something like that.
Missionary
Yeah.
work by proxy.
We did because there was only us there. There was no tourists. There was no the people from the big town. They didn't go in the interior, so we were the only ones.
What feels more like home, here or there now? What feels like home?
Well, no.
No?
That's not a good question. That's not a nice question.
Okay.
Okay.
No,
That's okay.
Alrighty. Well, that's very good. What are the things that you learned? Like you were able to exchange a lot of things with their culture. What are the things you learned
Them.
from
But-
them?
But they
I
learn
don't-
from them.
From them.
Patience.
I tell patience. But I tell you that what I saw after independence, I saw them living in our houses. They couldn't cope, and the village was always clean. The water was always in clean calabash. They managed. They really can survive. They are
In their
surviving.
own system.
They
yes.
really can survive in their own system. And once they are out of their system, they have to beg, and
Yeah, it doesn't work.
it doesn't work anymore. Now it does, because after 40 years they have university students and so on. But in those days, I think they were really survivors.
Yes.
Yeah, they managed to have everything.
Okay. Well, I think that's all my questions. Anybody else have questions?
No,
No?
Mr. President.
No? Very
We're still
good.
nearly to the end of the tape anyway.